Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and here is the second of the Forbidden Music series. Now, somebody was asking, how am I supposed to use this? I can't tell you that. The purpose of doing this is I get to do metering that I've been developing for years. The top meter that you'll see is Airwindows Meter, which assigns like a hit record score and shows three different kinds of things. Top meter is peak energy, not RMS. Everything shows you RMS. This is strictly peaks. You don't even get to see RMS. And the middle of the top, the one with the white background, the middle of that is slew energy. And slew energy has to do with brightness, but it also has to do with how loud the brightness is. And it's being registered. Showing it like that means if you are using the same meter, then you will see how your stuff stacks up on a slew meter or whatever as well. And this can be an enormous difference between classic vinyl record music back when people paid for music and modern stuff done in the DAW and on the laptop and so on. You actually have to do stuff to tone everything down in order to get it into the zone where it's comfortable to hear, because our ears like to hear certain kinds of things. Then the bottom meter on Airwindows Meter is a zero cross meter, which doesn't exist as far as I know anywhere else. And what that's doing is that is counting how long it's been since the latest crossing of zero. Low frequency stuff showing up will cause that to go longer before crossing zero, but high frequency stuff at the same time will make it more likely to, while doing like a big bass swing, swerve through and cross zero again. So it ends up being like a tonal balance control. If you want stuff to sound full and heavy and beefy, the zero cross meter has to be showing stuff that is in the bass. If it's not able to show anything that's in the bass, you have stuff out of balance and your high frequencies are too loud. If that middle meter with the white background is showing a lot of giant spikes, red spikes in there, that is what I sometimes call overslew. It's just louder high frequency information. And that might be getting too loud as well. You might want to turn some of that stuff down. Lastly, the meter in the very bottom with the black background, that is the meter in ConsoleH and ConsoleX2. And it combines all of those things together into one visual display. It's still a peak meter, but the color has to do with how much slew is going on, how much high frequency content is going on. And it's set up with colors that work better over the black background. So what you get is blue and red and stuff for deeply bassy sounds. Up into a greenish color is what on the original Airwindows Meter is blue, because that's over a black background, a white background, so it's easy to see. And the original Airwindows Meter made the blue dots be more vivid and intense, larger dots, when I considered it to be an exceptionally good resonant sonorous tone. And then in the bottom, the DarkMeter, you go beyond that to where it's going from green into cyan, which is a brighter color over black, and then all the way through to white is probably as bright as you want to go. And the reason I'm bringing all of this stuff up is because Hotel California is an education in how to use all of this stuff. It is pretty, considering the amount of peak energy in the track, how relatively quiet it is compared to anything you're used to in 2026. It's kind of amazing on the back of just that alone. But if you study that bottom meter, dark meter, and see where the peaks line up, firstly, there's just lots of dynamic space in the track. But then if you watch where the drum hits and things show up, the peaks will be higher in the meter. or when anything happens, like singing happens, it'll be in a particular place on the meter because it's a dynamic peak measurement. Singing comes in, it's going to be making representations on the meter, which tend to be in the cyan area. That's a very bright, sonorous sound out of the vocals. S's are lit up fully into the cyan without going fully bright, without being especially loud. They're balanced perfectly. And the drum hits tend to show up as exactly the right shade of cyan. This is not easy to do. I would be thinking in terms of like dialing stuff in to do that on purpose, using these meters to get a good sound. They did not use anything like that to get a good sound. They used their ears and typically just enormous amounts of cocaine. But that's a whole other story, and that's a different song off of this album, Hotel California. That'd be like Life in the Fast Lane. I could probably play that as well. But this is the magnum opus of the Beatles. What am I talking about? Eagles, sorry. I put a lot of work in all this stuff. I'm frazzled to the nth degree. Hotel California is the magnum opus of the Eagles in a very real sense. It's nothing like it. It shows off a bunch of mixing techniques to the nth degree. You will hear tiny little snippets of it throughout, but you'll see literally all of it shown up to and including the final outro with the guitars and everything. You'll hear little bitty snippets of all of that stuff, whether it be just a little burst of a kick drum, so you get to hear what the kick drum actually sounds like on the highest quality real track from back in the day in old vinyl. You get to hear what the sibilants and things sound like in context, like how far away do those S's sound like? Are they coming forward? Are they sitting back? How natural does it all sound? How natural do those acoustic guitars sound? How loud are they relative to the drum hits? How loud is the snare? One of the things about the Eagles is that they really leaned into putting a microphone in every drum, which is, it's not like they're the only people to do that. Honestly, the first one to really lean into it, if I remember correctly, because I could be missing something, but David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust album was notable for being a really early example of just wildly multi-mic'd everything, using up all the tracks and constructing mixes where it's not being captured just in a room. It's very much being captured with every single little element, mic'd as close as you could get it, and constructing something out of that. And that's what the Eagles wanted when they moved past their first albums. They did albums with Glyn Johns and some great stuff. Glyn Johns was also recording like The Who and so on, Led Zeppelin. And the deal with Don Henley in the Eagles is he is not a loud player. He is more along the lines of your Levon Helm from the band than a John Bonham. So he would say, "Can you turn the bass drum up?" And Glyn Johns would say, "Hit it harder." And Don Henley did not wish to hit it harder because he was moving the way he wanted to move to create the kind of groove he wanted to create, which is important. Like you got to figure that stuff out if you're making music. And so in early albums, he just had to accept not getting the sounds that he wanted. So when they brought in Bill Szymczyk, starting with, I think it's One of These Nights, but certainly by the time of Hotel California, he was fully in and fully taking control technically. What they asked Bill Szymczyk was, are you willing to let us have our own degree of delay and reverb on the vocals? Because Glyn John demanded having a certain amount of vocal reverb. And will you put a microphone on each and every drum? And Bill Szymczyk said, yup. And that's what you're going to hear. All of the drums are super multi-mic'd. They're mic'd as directly as possible. And the way that they are sculpted in mix is capable of bringing all of the detail out exactly as much as they wanted and no more. So you don't get an 80s sound out of this, but this is the quintessential 70s sound. Everything's really damped. It's all made out of peak energy. The peak energy reaches out beyond like anything you got later, really. There's a few exceptions, like some of the 80s bands were leaning into compression in a particular way that caused them to be wildly peak happy. But as far as dynamics coming off of literal vinyl, this is one of the peak achievements of the music industry. And again, and you don't get to hear it because this is forbidden music. It's music where you can't put this up, it'll just get content ID'd away. But you can see every second of it on metering and learn from what the metering shows you in case you wanted to do something along those lines so that you can be in the same ballpark. It'll probably be really surprising just how dynamic this is, just how anti-loudinated this is. The track is normalized to full volume. Like the hottest peak in the track is going to come across at literally clipping. So this track is clipping, but you're probably not hearing the moment that it's clipping because it doesn't spend most of its time making audible sound. It's using the content ID, so most of it's being hidden. But yeah, if you're asking, what am I supposed to do with this? Learn. This is the way we used to do music. This is the way music used to be back when people would spend a lot of money on records and have these tangible objects that they could keep, and it would become a really important thing in your life, like, oh, I got that album. It's amazing. I'm listening to it multiple times every day. It's changing my life. And there's a lot to be said for the way stuff was done back in this day because of the way the peak energy, which again is what's going to be displayed on the meter, the peak energy is extremely important. And when people started just first compressing and then limiting and then clipping it all away, something vital was lost. But it's not really lost because you can have it anytime you want. Just decide to do it that way. The Eagles, Hotel California.
I saw a shimmer too heavy and my sight grew night. I heard the name. I was thinking to myself, and there were voices down there say, California, such a lovely place. California, any time of year here, Tiffany twisted. 69. Voices are calling from night. Just welcome to the hotel. Such a lovely place. California. By surprise. Alibi. Ceiling. Ice, and she said, of our and in the master gathered for the feast.